Hello, happypreneurs, and welcome to another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. Today, we have Valerie all the way from, where are you from, Valerie?
I'm from Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne, Australia. Beautiful, beautiful. I've never been there. It's one of the places I want to go. So thank you for being on the show. And we are going to dive in with some amazing content. So let's just start with a really hard-hitting question for you. Talk therapy. Why does it take so much time for people to see results?
I love this question. I love it, love it, love it. Because a lot of people present with an issue and they go, for example, oh, how long is it going to take for my depression, my anxiety, my phobia, whatever it may be? What they don't understand is, I know that we talk about the onion a lot. You're going in with an onion. We have to peel back the onion and get to the absolute root cause. So talk therapy does have its place for some people, but it's a very, very, very long road for the outcome. Also, talk therapy tends to go around in circles, week after week after week. Like talk therapy back in the day, that's all there was. I know in the 60s and 70s, talk therapy, you just go and how are you? And you may even be medicated. And thank goodness, Brad, we sit here today in 2023 knowing that there's so many other options out there for people. So talk therapy does have its place, but it's a very, very long road.
So what is it Marissa Pierce says, one of our mentors? She says that you go to the dentist and you've got a really bad toothache. And would they ever say to you, well, let's get to know you and then we'll come back next week and we'll talk a little bit more about your tooth. And then
No.
maybe in a couple of weeks we'll extract it. And the person's like, no, I'm in pain. So we have fortunately stumbled upon something called RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy, which allows, you've done this a lot of times. How many hours have you seen that usually takes for your clients to see major transformation?
Look, I do another modality ISET, which is similar to RTT. And that's when I was approached. Would I be interested? And I love being current and evolving. And so from my experience, which I know we're going to talk about a little down the track, most people that I see would be 1 to 3 sessions, just getting to that root cause. And they just can't believe it. They've tried everything.
Yeah. So do most of the clients that you work with now, have they been to talk therapy for a period of time?
They've tried everything. To give you an example, I had a guy with PTSD. And he was in his 40s. He had been around the block many, 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 many times. So, a lot of people, RTT hypnotherapy, as you know, Brad, is it's global now. It's far reaching. So the name's getting out there and people are starting to jump on board because they've had a friend or a family member go. And I just remember seeing this person in one session just go, oh my God, I have spent thousands of dollars and I can't believe how many hours. And you're the only one that's been able to get me from here to here. So I talked before about the talk therapy. RTT hypnotherapy is from here to source. Let's get in there. Let's do something about it.
I have a 5-week program and I end the 5th session by asking, can you give me a rating on a scale of 1 to 10? And I asked this gentleman, he said 10. And I said, what else can I do different? And he said, nothing. And I said, knowing now what you know, what would you pay for this? And he said $25,000. And I said, why? He goes, because I have spent tens of thousands of dollars over the last 20 years and I didn't get anywhere near as far as I got with you in 5 sessions. So back to talk therapy. We're going to talk more about your story and we'll talk about what you did to overcome your issues. But I was someone who went to talk therapy for almost 30 years. And I went to about over 50 marriage counseling sessions. And look, did I learn something? I learned something, but it didn't change my behavior, because what traditional therapy is it's focused on the symptoms and it's focused on the conscious mind, right? And we know that the conscious mind doesn't doesn't have much effect on your behavior.
Mm-mm.
The subconscious mind controls 95% of your behavior. So
Mm.
it's interesting that you go somewhere to solve a problem of your mind, but yet you focus on the 5% that doesn't really control the behavior that you're trying to change in the first place.
Absolutely. Who would know? Hey, who
Yeah.
knew?
Yeah. So how is what you do in RTT different from traditional talk therapy?
Well, as I said, it's that straight line. I get to know you. We can do that via a call beforehand. I have a lot of questions. It's not a one size fits all with me. I get to know you over a call. We have the call, and I can gently, with all the tools and the techniques, which I have a vast variety in my toolbox, I can help you in a very safe and very gentle manner without you reliving a thing, get you to here. And it's life changing, absolutely life changing. And just for me as the therapist in front of whoever, I always get them and say, go have a look in the mirror. And they just come back, I can't believe it. I look younger. I feel lighter. I feel amazing. Yeah, because we've got to the root cause of what you wanted to work on.
So I want to hear about what you do with the subconscious mind, but I want to tell a quick story because yesterday I had the fourth session with a gentleman. So it was a week after his hypnosis session, and he looked like a different person. His skin looked clearer. He was like, "Yeah, I don't have any bags under my eyes. I'm sleeping better." He's like, "I feel freer." It really is amazing. So tell us what is the work that you do on the subconscious mind that makes it so effective for people to change their behavior?
Well, most people walk around mainly on autopilot. I know I was doing the same thing day in, day out. And what a lot of people don't realize is that little sleeping giant at the back is your subconscious mind. Never sleeps, it's always recording. And I like to, well, for me, I have a filing cabinet. So whenever I've needed help, I can then just go in and pluck that out. It's got everything in there. So emotions will always win over logic. But the subconscious mind has everything there from the moment we were born right to current day, sitting in front of whatever modality of whatever therapist. So the work that we do, we bypass all that and we get into that subconscious mind that's got all the answers of why you think a certain way, why you behave a certain way, about your behaviors. Why do you all of a sudden have a short fuse and you can't stop yourself? And I could go on and on. But as you know, Brad, we get into that subconscious mind. It's very safe, it's very gentle, but so effective. And we can unravel what those limiting beliefs that we gained mainly in childhood.
Yeah, so my subconscious mind for 47 years of my life was telling me that I wasn't worthy and I had to prove myself.
Mm,
And it wasn't
yeah.
until I got into that and realized like I didn't wake up every day saying, "Oh my gosh, like I'm a terrible human being," but my behavior showed that I didn't feel worthy about myself. So
Mm,
once you figure out what's driving you and the cause of that pain, then you have the ability to change it because as we know, all change begins with awareness, right?
absolutely.
So
Look,
tell us about
I was the best people pleaser, low self-worth, low self-esteem, masking, how are you? Oh, great. Whereas actually inside it was a very different story.
So let's talk about your past and your history. What is your story, and specifically, what was your childhood like?
Well, anyone looking in would have looked picture perfect, which is another thing that we come across. Had a loving mother and a loving father. Lived in a house that was my mother's childhood home. But it was a Christmas Eve. My father went off to work. He, back in the day, was one of the best tradies, a roof tiler and a glazier. He was also a sportsman. He was a runner and played football. So he went off to work as he did every other day. Long story short, he fell through a double-story roof. As a 6-year-old, I was standing there watching my father going through agonizing pain and a whole heap of other stuff and being carted off to hospital. He, fortunately, 8 weeks later, shuffled his little self out of a hospital. They were talking paraplegia. But he also, at that time when I was 6, he said, it's the power of the mind. He said, I had 3 daughters at the time, a wife, and that was not going to happen to me. So I was very young to understand that, oh, this thing in here is very powerful. Fast forward 3 months later, my mother wanted to go to church. My father was away. And because she had gone through all that stress and kept the family together, her adrenals, that cortisol that was surging through her body, she had a collapse. So what happened to me was that I was then farmed out to relatives. And that's what I mean, farmed out, because it was not my choice. And I happened to go with a grandmother and a grandfather that I wasn't terribly fond of.
Oh,
And so the impact of that in my in school and as I grew up, but it wasn't until my adult life that I met a psychologist. She was a clinical psychologist, and she pointed out to me that by what happened to me back there, that created such abandonment inside of me that created the low self-esteem and the low self-worth. So I did some work with her. She was a bit of a trailblazer back then because there wasn't the RTTs and there wasn't the ISET, which is what I also do. She did cutting of the ties that bind. So she was quite liberating. So that sort of snipped also. I wanted to snip from any ancestral trauma and any of that ancestral stuff that just gets passed down, values, belief systems, generation after generation. I wanted the buck to stop with me.
so Valerie, how old were you when you went to that psychologist who was able to help you point that pain back to that childhood experience?
35.
Okay, so at 34, you remembered being quote farmed out, right? To your relatives?
Absolutely, at the age of 6.
So you remembered it, but you had no idea the impact it had on you and how it was driving your behaviors, right?
None. And I had read, I think, every shelf of a beautiful shop here in Melbourne. Every Saturday I would go in and I would be looking, books would be falling off shelves. And I go, oh, I need to read. So, yeah, self-help books,
Yeah.
because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do.
So almost on a daily basis, when I talk to my clients about their childhood, 9 out of 10 of them will say that there was nothing wrong. I don't understand why I'm here. And then when I start
Mm,
talking to them, it's just like, oh my gosh, like no, your needs weren't met as a child, right?
mm.
Um, and as I have on the screen right now, all change begins with awareness. So you were able to start healing at age 35 because
Yes.
you were finally aware. That person went to the source of the pain, right?
Yes.
Whether you have physical pain or mental pain, the only way that you can heal it is to be going to the source. And unfortunately, most talk therapy doesn't always go to the source. So we're kind of full circle back to why it takes so long is because
Yeah.
we talk a lot about the symptoms, but let's figure out what's causing this.
Absolutely. As I said, there wasn't a lot of all of this stuff out there at that time. So it was like, wow, it just blew my mind. And of course, a lot of people, as you're meandering through your day, they'd come, what are you on? What are you taking? What are you doing? You're glowing. I said, yeah, I feel free. I feel amazing. I don't feel trapped in whatever that was because we don't know what that is. But it was like, oh, okay, so that's it. So how I felt, how I thought, how I behaved, it was just a domino effect into all areas of my life. And it was amazing. I mean, I was just attracting the same person, just in different clothing. They were all either on drugs or alcohol. They were remote, unavailable, and my needs. It was like poking the bed, like the complete control panel of inside of me was being pressed constantly, and I had no clue.
So I'm sure some people listening or who have heard your story are like, you know, your dad got in an accident. A lot of parents get in accidents.
Yeah,
Your parents had to do what they had to do. They had to,
yeah.
you know, like you said, farm you out. You know, that shouldn't be a big deal. You know, get
Mm,
over it.
mhm.
What would you say to someone saying that?
Well, how do you get over that? You know, we as children, we attach meanings to things. Oh, well, I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. And that certainly was me. I never felt enough. You know, I would absolutely compromise myself all the time to be that people pleaser, to be of service. So, you know, it can be, when I say little, I don't mean to diminish what people go through. Um, you know, sometimes it just doesn't have to be that obvious huge. It can be, your needs just aren't being met, and that's as simple as it is. And my needs, what I needed, weren't being met. And yeah, you're right, Brad. I mean, my parents did the best that they could at the time. I was with family, but my memory of it is probably very different to what the grandparents thought they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you just don't get over it, right? You get
No,
over
you
it
can't.
through doing the work, but
Yeah.
the trauma, as Dr. Gabor Mate says, the
Mm.
trauma isn't actually the event. That's a traumatic event.
Yes.
The trauma is the story you tell yourself. But
Yes.
as a 6-year-old, is anyone going to fault a 6-year-old for saying, "Look, my parents are not around. Like they must not love me. I must not be good enough." No, your brain is doing exactly what it should be doing to get
Mm.
you through that traumatic event. It's saying, "Here is a reason. You've got to have a reason why this is happening to you." So when something bad happens to a 6-year-old, what do they say? I must be bad. So
That's right.
it's not about getting over something. It's about understanding the meaning that you placed on something that's now controlling your life. Because that person who probably judges you or me and says, just get over it, have a look at their life and see what their results and their relationships are like and their health is like. And do they drink too much and eat too much? Like if you try to just get over it as a child or as an adult, it doesn't work. Like these things
Mm.
are buried in your subconscious mind. There's a few ways, but you know, the ways that you and I use the hypnosis is one of the best that I've come across.
Absolutely. And how many times do you have people go, "Oh, you'll be fine. Good night's sleep. You know, get out in some sunshine." Everyone's got a solution, but
Yeah.
it doesn't work. It just does not work.
Because the subconscious mind doesn't know time, right?
That's right.
It's supposed to keep you alive. So I was having a conversation yesterday with a client, and his parents are in their 80s, and he was telling me about some of their shortcomings. And I said, "Listen, you are the way you are because of them, and
Mm.
they might be 82 years old, but they're a 6-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl in the adult body." And I told him that, and he goes, "That's one of the most profound things that I've heard in
Mm.
in these sessions with you," because he sat there and his wheels were spinning like, "Oh my gosh, my mom and dad, even at 82 years old, are still that hurt little boy and little girl because they never knew. They were told just
That's
get
right.
over it, it's fine." And they've
Yeah.
lived their whole life. So what was it that I know you mentioned the psychologist and tying it back, but what actually got you from this person who was attracting the wrong people and not happy and going through all this turmoil to the person you are today?
Well, I do have to honour the lovely psychologist that I did have at 35, and doing a lot of the cutting of the ties, the Phyllis Crystal method, that stopped my attracting the wrong types of people into my life. So I do have to acknowledge that for me. But having said that, I'm now with, I met a beautiful man 7 years later, and it was just amazing. I didn't quite know what to do with him because he wasn't those people. He was this beautiful, gentle, loving man that was very. It was a healthy relationship. So that took me a little time to get used to. And then life's, you know, you're going along in life and things start to emerge again. And you think, oh, I thought I'd dealt with that. No, I hadn't dealt with that. And so things were being poked. And again, it all went back to when I was 6, of that not feeling good enough, not being heard, not important enough. I didn't matter. I could go on and on. You know, Brad, all of those symptoms. So I was very particular at this particular time. unfortunately, 8 people passed away within 2 years, including my parents and some
Wow.
friends, a nephew-in-law. A lot happened. Job change, house change, all the majors, right? So I was very particular in who I could go to. I didn't know about RTT then, so I did luck on to a person that did a lot of EMDR. And I have to say, for me, because it was new, EMDR helped me with the emotions. But then I came across RTT, and RTT was able, for me, because I had done a lot of work on myself, it helped me go back to that 6-year-old and mop up what was left. And it gave
So,
me a greater understanding of what happened, why it happened. It also gave me an opportunity to speak with my parents through some wonderful tools that you and I now know, Brad. And it was so freeing. It was so liberating. And I now have that part of me securely in here, happy, singing, playing, and having fun.
So if you're listening to this and you have gone from one bad relationship to the next, there's a reason for that, right? We're recreating
Yes.
we're recreating our stress from our childhood. That 6-year-old self who's hurt is looking for the person to rescue them. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you want to know if that 6-year-old is hurt inside you, I developed this quiz, this self-love quiz at bradchandler.com/quiz. Take the quiz. And if you score anything but extreme self-love, if you score mild self-love or lack of self-love, I promise you 99.8% chance that there's some correlation back to your 6-year-old self or 4-year or 8-year-old, whatever it is, that is
Mm.
inhibiting you to love yourself. And if you don't have extreme self-love, if you have one of the two lower categories, I can promise you that it's likely every area of your life is negatively affected. So don't take the quiz and get a lower score and be like, woe is me. Just the opposite. Take the quiz
Mm.
and be like, are you freaking kidding me? Because I can tell you, and Valerie will vouch, that if you go from, and I've had clients on week 1 that were lack of self-love and went to extreme self-love in those 5 weeks because they learned the truth, right? If you have those two lower categories, your life can change so profoundly for the better. I mean, in
Absolutely.
hours, in hours.
Mm. Mm. Just like that.
Yeah.
Literally. Literally.
So Valerie, what do you do now?
Well, I still use ISET, which is an integrated self-empowerment therapy. It was founded by a beautiful lady here called Eileen Goebel. She since passed on. And the reason why I still use that, it still works. It's very similar to RTT, but it's a different approach. So what I use now is for the ones that come in that have seen a lot of the stage hypnotherapy, they're not having a bar of that. Well, that's okay. I will use ISET, and they're like, oh, wow, this stuff's great. Then the next session they go, what's that RTT hypnotherapy? And I said, well, it's not stage hypnotherapy. It's hypnotherapy that gets you faster to the root cause. And they go, oh, how do you do it? So we just do a little bit of a role play. Once they see how safe it is, they go, right, can we do that now? That's what I have.
And
And I've had amazing results.
what does a typical client come to you wanting? What kind of help?
Well, it sort of comes for me, it comes in themes. So I've had a lot of, and of course, then it's referrals, so word of mouth. So I've recently had a lot of phobias, social anxiety. She had a phobia about leaving the house, dog phobia, a lady 50 years of age. It was her mother who had an incident with a dog whilst my client was in the womb.
Wow.
So yes, so she said, I haven't had any bad experiences, but she said something to me and I went, aha. So I got her to very gently have a look at this, and she went, oh, I can't believe it. It's when I was in the womb with my mum. it's my mum's phobia. I said, yes, it's not your phobia. So things get passed down. I've had a gentleman who, it's confidence. Boy, oh boy, little did he know what was laying at the back of that. That was absolutely huge. So I have all sorts of people. There was the PTSD person who we worked on 4 ages, and he took those 4 ages, we called them the lads, and he went back to originally the country that he was born in, and he went with himself and the 4 lads, as he called it, and he went and reconciled with his parents. It was amazing.
Wow.
It just floors me every time.
Wow. So how do people reach you, Valerie?
They can reach me via email, which is info@restoreyourmindhypnotherapy.com.au, or just head to my website, restoreyourmindhypnotherapy.com.au.
So what have I not asked you that you think would be really helpful for the listeners to know?
Well, I would like to, if I may, talk to you about the client that came with confidence. So he was lacking in confidence. So we tried to expand on that, but he was lacking in confidence in every area of his life. He did an RTT session. We did it over Zoom. And what I saw was just absolutely phenomenal. Now, what I'm about to say isn't phenomenal. He actually went into shock. He was fine, and he just was like this, and his color changed because it was so profound. It took him back to when he was 8 years old, where he was accused of doing something so inappropriate, which, by the way, he didn't. And his mother and his grandmother stepped in. He was taken to a police station. They were his voice. So at 8, he had no voice from that moment on.
Wow.
He said to me, I actually caught up with him for a coffee recently. He just looks completely different. He's changing careers. He's leaving a relationship. He's so strong now, and he can see. It's like, he said, it's like all of these layers, these veils, plastic, whatever, has all lifted. He said, I can see everything so clearly. It's not me. It never was me. It was them. That's right. His mother couldn't be happier, being, the mother of this person. He said, it's just changed my life. I said, well, you can always come back for another session. He said, I don't need to. He said, I'm flying. He said, I'm making money. I'm making good decisions. I'm confident in my decisions. My thoughts have changed. My sleep has changed. Everything changed because he went back to the root cause of this horrible thing that he was accused of doing from when he was 8 years of age. And he goes, I can't thank you enough. I always say to my clients, it's not me, it's you. You showed up, you did the work. I just drove the bus and we just stopped off at a few stops. But ultimately the client, when they're serious, the effects are absolutely profound.
Yeah, I've heard that all too often. A client say, I can't believe that I never thought that this wasn't my issue. This was never about me. This was about my broken parents or my broken caregivers. But we put that on ourselves. It's like, again, how do we survive as a 6-year-old when something's bad's happening? We're like, we must be bad. That's how we survive. And then that's embedded into our mind for the rest of our lives until we choose to do the work.
Absolutely. Well, I looked at him, and the only way I can describe it, it was like watching a chicken hatch, just breaking through all that shell, that barrier, and this new amazing person emerged. That's the only way I can describe it. It was, for me, it was like, wow, just watching this.
I had a client midweek tell me that. I said, what has it been since, like, what's life been like since your hypnosis session last week? He's like, Brad, it's like I literally broke out of an egg. This was the one whose
Uh-huh.
bags under his eyes went and his skin looked so beautiful. He was like, I literally broke out of a shell. I get that. I hear that people feel this freedom, like, oh my gosh. For me, after that 3-hour session, it was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I looked around and I'm like, wait, I don't have to prove anything. Like my
Mhm.
whole life I've spent trying to prove my worth to other people. And I'm like, wait, I'm okay just as I am. And now I
Yeah.
can be my authentic self, and I don't need marijuana or alcohol to make me comfortable. And man, life is good and it just keeps getting better.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, including myself, we try the let's be vulnerable. Gee, that works a treat. Just being vulnerable, being real, being open. There's no room for error there with people. You don't have to wear that mask. You can
Yeah,
just be I know all these words get bandied around, but it's so true, Brad. You just can be the person that you were before whatever that was that you interpreted.
right. Well, if you want to join a group of other happypreneurs, go to bradchandler.com/Facebook. And I have a Facebook group, a private group called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. And we have amazing community. It's growing. This is a movement. I want to help change the world and make this world a better place. So if you want to join the movement, please do. Valerie, it was a pleasure. Pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for all your insight.
Thank you so much, Brad. It's been great to be with you.
And if you like the show, please go share it. Please go rate it. Please go review it, subscribe, whatever you got to do to let people know about the How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs podcast. Much love.